and I think you can't have one without the other. Are we being rigorous enough for ourselves and the future generations? And the many people that I've heard talking about what do I do, how do I get into this work, how do I learn about it in this conference over the past few days, deserve that attention from us. They really deserve that attention from us. Give them the historical framework, the theoretical framework, and the stepping stones, not to imitate what old guys like some of us, me, have done, but in order to step towards their own innovation, but not reinvent the wheel and not disconnect from the rich traditions we have. Thank you.
Now we are passing on the microphone to Helen.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I want to talk about a practical application, and I want to talk about play building as one of the threads of work that we might do. And by that I mean devising original work with a group from their own ideas, not a writer, but actually improvising and creating a show together. A few years ago I was introduced to the concept of twinning. A writer called Noel Gregg, who lived in London, with John McGrath at in Manchester at the Contact Theatre in the UK, created a project called Contacting the World. The idea is that you take two groups who have differences. They are separated by some kind of border. It might be two different countries, it might be two different sides of the same city, it might not be a geographical border, it might be age, across age or culture or language. But two groups who have differences. In the case of Contacting the World, 12 international companies and their youth companies are randomly twinned. The youth theatre that I'm the director of, the creative arts team here in New York City, was fortunate to be a part of that process a few years ago. It's a year-long process, and the idea is that over that year, each month, you get given a creative task that you complete and exchange with your twin. It might be something physical that you send in the mail, it might be email, it might be Facebook, it might be YouTube, and at certain times it might be that an individual literally goes to the other country or the other place. With the idea that you are going to allow those tasks to impact the work that you do, in form, content, and the actual process that you use for creating. So that at the end of the year, you devise an original piece of theatre that you could not have created without the influence of your twin. So we were twinned with a group of refugees and asylum seekers from West Africa now living in London. And I want to share a concrete example. One of the first tasks was to choose some objects that you felt were symbolic of your country and culture, put them in a box, a literal cardboard box, and send them off. Two of the things that we sent were two photographs. One of our young people had wanted to send pictures of a side of New York that perhaps people who come and visit don't always see. So it was a picture of a boarded up window and a picture of a car repair shop, an auto repair shop, which had a sign Body Shop over the top. When we got the responses back from our twins, the response was, we were so glad to see, A, that you sent a picture of a prison, because we know how many of your young people you incarcerate in America, and B, that you had sent something related to slavery. Body Shop. That was clearly the place where slaves were sold. So our young people had an extraordinary reaction to that. They were furious. Why is it that everybody thinks America's slavery? How many years ago was that? How many countries still have slavery now? Why is it that America keeps everybody going slavery, slavery? And then they calmed down, and then they moved into a place of reflecting on, okay, we're in an international relationship. Slavery is a reality. It's part of our history. Part of the other theme that was coming up was about secrets and things we prefer to keep hidden. And the young people talked a lot about the guilt and shame that they still felt about this being a part of American history and still a key part of the culture. and gradually decided that they really needed to start looking at that piece, all coming from that photograph. The process is one that ends up being deeply reflective. We had to ask who we were as individuals, who we were as a company representing the United States abroad, how we work, why we worked the way we did. We were forced to make choices every step of the way and justify them to each other and to our twin. But not only that, we also had a responsibility to the material that we were getting from our twins. What did it mean? Why were they choosing to send that? What questions did it raise? What was our response to it? And then how were we going to create with it? What was our responsibility to it? I've been devising for years and years and really wanted something to shake me up and challenge me. And maybe the nature of true challenge is that you don't get the challenge you think you're going to get. You get something else. I was kind of expecting that through this year of creative tasks that we were being given, a pathway would emerge that would help us through the devising process. Actually, the tasks on the whole did not build on one another. They seemed to be almost random. They didn't take us through an A to Z of here's how you devise a show. One month it would be a research task, another month it would be an image, another month it would be about process, another month it would be about questions. And I grew to realize that this was really important, actually, to allow for many different types of companies working in different kinds of processes with cultural ramifications that couldn't always be anticipated. We were never asked to make theatre. We were asked to create something. And that relates back to assumptions we can make, even about what we think theatre is or isn't. I was also expecting that a pathway would emerge in our relationship with our twin. We were going to create a show, we were going to share them on the same night. I thought, we'll find a common theme, a common character, common place, symbol, something. We never did. We never agreed on one thing that we were going to create together. Other companies did. We went to see the shows at the end of the year. There was a big festival, and a lot of twins had common themes or characters or something that you could go, that's where they got that from. But as we were going through that year, the journey was, are we doing this right? To, they're not doing it right. To, hang on a minute, what's right? Ah, there isn't right. They're searching for how we're going to work together and create this process together. And realizing that you can't decide ahead of time how a collaboration will be. You need to let it breathe and grow and become what it needs to become. You can't control it. Each company in this process needs to do what it does, but taking and giving with another. And needing to explain and justify and think through all the choices and decisions that we're making, we define ourselves in relation to another. And it was a real exploration about collaboration and moving through initial resistance. We offended each other, we distressed each other, we really stepped outside our comfort zone. At times it was really uncomfortable. Ah, yeah, that was the point. That was the absolute point in terms of beginning to learn how to work together. In the end, our points of connection were actually rich, deep, multi-layered. There were so many connections. We created a show about the African burial ground here in New York City. We took two of our twins, when they came over from our twin company, to the African burial ground. One young woman had never heard of slavery. She said, you have to go to school to know about slavery. In the center of the lobby, there's a large diagram on the floor with many languages from Africa and symbols. Between the two of them, they spoke a huge number of those languages and were able to identify for us some of the meanings in the floor that we hadn't understood. Ironically, New York City was the largest slavery port outside of Charleston. We ended up taking the show to Liverpool, the biggest slavery port in Europe. At the festival, one of the other companies was from Zambia. At the end of our show, they said to us, why are you so interested in race? For us, we're more interested in why the road doesn't come to our house and why we don't have electricity. Thank you.
when I start with a practice before the student. And after I make my practice, I write my student. It doesn't make difference where it start out. In the analysis later, we will see how the things will go. But I believe very much in the performance art. Yes, as our friends say, the things go together. But sometimes you need to have something completely different from the normal things. I graduated from the college where they teach me theater. A huge history of theater. From the essence, through the Shakespeare, and everything you can imagine. At the end, in my last 10 years, I find this is, for me, I have no relation with this. It didn't give any meanings to my people. What is the meaning of Shakespeare in Darfur? Nothing. How can I make Hamlet? What is this? Why we are keeping in Africa, in other countries, teaching those theory? Why we are talking about classic, modern classic, Broadway, off-Broadway? Why? What is this? For us, we should tell you what we have. And when we have the exchange, this is the practice, not the theory. We have another step. So I believe very much the only thing is universal is the outcome of the art. How you feel about a performance for 1 hour or 15 minutes, and how do you understand it, and how you explain it to yourself. What is the meaning of the color in that performance? And if you go deep into the concept of the performance, that's great. If not, if we take the outlines, for me this is enough as an audience. This is in the normal classic theater. But in our concept, let us use the concept or initiative instead of theory, in my idea. Because I believe that the audience should be part of the performance. There is no audience in our concept or in theory. They are partnership. They are making, they are redesigning. Yes, I compose, I make the choreography, I design, I perform, and the performance, I compose it completely from A to Z, but I believe very much it's still something missing. I complete it with the audience. You will see this later if you are here after 3 o'clock. I believe very much we should talk about open performance. That performance can accept the others. This is democracy. And this is the freedom to choose where you are from the performance. And this is very important to develop the performance. The performance I gave it today, it will never look like what I gave it 1 hour before or after 1 hour. So nothing for me, for my theater, if you like the word, is stick to one of the theory. We are developing the things. Yes, I'm teaching. I do my research. I'm writing about, we call it documents, about 7 documents about composing, about festivality, but it's still something written. When we came to implement it, this is completely different. I didn't feel that there is a difference between what I write it as a research and what I implemented when I compose a performance. And this happened to me since 1997, when I start changing the whole idea about the theory itself, theory of theater. What I learned, I go to another college outside of Sudan, but it is the same. For theater in conflict, this is the story, how we are making the practice before the theory. For theater in conflict, we didn't start with the word theater in conflict, although now the theater of conflict zone, as theory or as initiative, it is too big. It is part of the UNESCO. You know the UNESCO, they are running after the peace culture. They try to do peace culture, but what we try to do in the picture is completely different. I start in south of Sudan, in Malakhi with the child soldiers. They are child soldiers. They have nothing to do together. All of them are there part of different rebel groups or soldiers to the government, whatever it is, they never came together in the same camp. Even they are not eating together. The only time they came together when we have a rehearsal, when we have a performance. So I believe the performance, the art itself can help in the peace building. This is why we said the performance art can help in the peace building, can help in another big issue in this conflict zone, in the capacity, because you know the people suffering very much. So I will show you the photo because I have only 4 minutes. Yes, this is the theater in conflict zone. And then 4 minutes, only 4 minutes. Okay. So the technical things is not in our. Yes. Okay. Look at this. This is what I talk about. This the circle, the round table, the round performance. You see the circle. I feel very well. The circle is more. It gives the audience and the artist. They are becoming one man. It is true. This is our actors. This is in Darfur, in an empty place. And we see the soldiers. The soldiers are more audience than before. They're supposed to guard the performance, but they became all guarders. Look at the people attending the performance. Look at this guy. He's supposed to take care of us, but now they're you see, this guy also. And look at the old ladies, the nice ladies. They will be part of the performance. I will go quick. We have only 2 minutes. Yes. This is the actors and the actress, if you call them. This is the artist. Our drums, whatever it is. And now we start the performance. We are not different from the audience there. So even in our clothes, the whole thing is part of the audience. We never bring to them something not belong to them. We take from them. And we rewrite it if you want the word. We design it if you want the word. And give it back to them. It will become more rich when they are participating. This is the idea. Yes? Yes? Okay. Now the children are part of the performance, very much, because we use also child games. Yes. Okay. Yes, outside. We try to find a place to make the performance. We ask the audience to choose the place. So now we work to find a place. And they will help us to find the place. Now this is in the camp, one of the camps, the refugees camps or the IDPs camps. Now they are leading us. They tell us where is the good place. So they are the producer designer of the performance. They are their company, they are our company, our producer. So you see, we agree on the place, we start the performance. Look at this guy with the hat. Now, he is not with us. This one, the white. This one, yes. Yellow, go ahead. You remember this face? And you will see him. Okay. Yes, go ahead. Look at the audience where they are sitting. Yes, this guy. This is the same guy. He asked me, can I join you? And he have the same clothes we have in his house. And he brought it and he became part of the performance. You see him? Yes, go ahead. Look at the last ladies. This is the old ladies. This is the old ladies. She's a young, nice lady, not old. In the last minute, I will tell you the story of the old lady. The last minute, ma'am, okay? The last minute. Finish?
You have 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. Okay, this is the last part of the story in 1 second. The old lady, she talked to me after the end of the performance, and she told me, look, for the last 7 years, since we leave our village, I never danced. I never had this nice time. So I want to give you something. So she has something in her sari, her toe. She gave me a small black stone. She told me, I brought this from my village for the last 7 years. I keep it. I gave it to you because I have a new character today. That's all. Thank you.
Fully rounded without your questions or comments. We have how much time?
10 minutes.
About 10 minutes, and I see the hands already raising. So, where's the young people who run around with the mics?
Yes, thank you all so much. That was, I feel like I'm becoming a better learner as I'm listening to you. You were talking earlier, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names, but you were mentioning earlier about people saying they want tools in their toolbox. And I was thinking about the difference between being a tool user and a tool creator, and how all of your work is about creating new tools as theater artists, and that's very exciting, working with young people. I've worked in housing projects in New York City for 33 years, and one of the things that I find very interesting is the artist that was talking about the work in twinning. When you mentioned that the young people in New York were annoyed about the context of, raising the issue of slavery, it seemed to me that that conversation that developed had a lot to do with the partnership between the more experienced adults and the young people who didn't want to talk about slavery. But I find that that's a very tricky kind of a, how do you create the partnership where people are, as adults, this came up in the Obama campaign also, those of us who went through the civil rights movement, were very concerned about the history and wanted to talk about history. And younger people don't want to talk about history. That's not something that they're thinking about, very concrete things, whether there's electricity or whatever. I find that a very tricky balance. How are you not impositional by raising issues that young people don't necessarily want to hear about, but yet we as adults or experienced people want them to learn about. So how do you work with that? I mean, there were millions of places where you could have gone with that twinning thing, and you went in that direction as the experienced theater artist. So it's very interesting to me how you...
Yeah, that wasn't my agenda. That came about because of the relationship with the twin. So that wasn't, I didn't know that's where we were going to go. I didn't really have an investment in one or another. It was the young people's response, because the whole idea of this program is very much that it should be driven by the participants. The whole thing is about young people who are under the age of 24. People who are over the age of 24 don't really have much of a role. When you go to the festival at the end of the week, the whole philosophy of the festival is very much about everything, the panels, the workshops, everything is run by young people, not by the adults. So the whole point of this project was that it was participant driven. So they decide what responsibility do we think we have to this thing that we're getting from our twins, who are also young people.
So did the question come up around secrets that people had? Did that come from the young people?
Yes.
We started working in, we were working in the north of Afghanistan in Kunduz with this girls' theater group. And we were doing kind of image theater, and we assumed that they were going to come up with this kind of image theater addressing some of the issues. They would come up with issues that we just assumed. The issues that they came up with in their image theater sequence were, there's a tree by my house, and I'm afraid it's going to fall on my house. That was one of their issues. Another one was, people don't drive carefully. They should get driving lessons. That was another one of these things. I assumed they were going to be talking about some of their repression or whatever. You know, we go with these expectations, and in fact, they don't manifest that way.
Hello, thank you. But then so many things. But let me just comment on Chris when you talk about meaning and work. It reminded me suddenly of Fella. There is a line in Fella, in the Broadway production, where talking about colonialism, he said, so you took our diamonds, you took our gold, you took our people, and what did you give back? You give back God. So he says, well, it's quite unfair, isn't it? It's kind of a swindle. So I have the impression that in all this world of cooperation, now there is a neo-colonial approach that I would call the moral approach, the mission approach. And people think that they have the mission, Westerners think that they have the mission of going to Africa to help, to heal, etc. I think it's a wrong approach. I mean, my approach has been very different. It's more in the idea of common property. I mean, I go and I start the first day telling my actors in Africa, in America, in Asia, I say, I'm going to rob your ideas, so please rob my ideas. And the more we rob each other, the better. Because then we will start talking about 3 words that in these 3 days I haven't heard much. One is the word pleasure. I think it's important to talk about pleasure when we do theater, and we do theater wherever we go. I think that without pleasure, it's very difficult to have a good creation. The other word would be humor, the same. I mean, I don't know, but my experience in Africa, it's of a very humoristic world, and that has to be taken clearly. And because if not, everything becomes very tragic, but that is a problem. That is not the reality, that is a personal problem. And the third word is love. I mean, there is a lot of love in what we do. And this love is also one of the bases of our production. Because my experience of the relativity of words is very clear. I wrote a play in Spain on child abuse and molesting by priests. I wrote it in the intention of healing the victims, long series of victims. This was before this became now notoriously known, as you can read today in the New York Times. I wrote that play with that intention. I was threatened to death for 2 years, and the people that threatened to me to death for 3 years, and there could be more than 3,000 sues, they used the same words that I did, for peace, for healing,